All right, wonderful, thank you. All right, this is the regular meeting of the Plan and Design Commission for the City of Highland Park. It is November 19th, 2024. I call the meeting to order. Will you please take the roll, Director Fontaine?
Commissioner Nannis.
Here.
Commissioner Henry.
Here.
Commissioner Mantis. Commissioner Hecht. Vice Chair Kirsch.
Present.
Chair Moore.
Present.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair, and I'd like to recognize Alex Mendoza, our student rep, Annette Lidower, City Council Liaison, Marcus Martinez, Corporation Counsel, Hannah Sayed, Corporation Counsel, and Carl and I are here.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, the first item of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting, which was a special meeting on November 5th, 2024. Can I get a motion?
I have one edit.
Okay, let's do the motion and then we'll have a discussion and do the edits then.
Thank you.
Move approval of the minutes from November 5th.
Okay, motion by Vice Chair Kirch.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Henry. Any discussion?
On the packet page 8, on line 37, there's just a typo for my name.
I caught that too.
That's all. I read it.
Any more comments?
Thank you.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays, so the minutes pass. Okay. Our first item of business is a design review with exterior lighting, landscaping, and other variations at 2860 Skokie Valley Road. Now, this had been opened at a previous, here, do I need to reopen this hearing?
This is a new item and this is design review.
Okay, so
It's not a public hearing. It's a
Okay,
public meeting,
sorry,
but it's not a public
meeting, not
hearing.
All right, so, all right, Mr. Burhop, would you mind walking us through the item?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My name is Carl Burhop. I'm a senior planner with the City of Highland Park in the Planning Division and the Community Development Department. This is a request for design review with exterior lighting and landscaping variations for 2860 Skokie Valley Road. This is for a dealership on Highway 41. This is a photo of the site, Zone B3 Highway Commercial Zoning Districts, located on the west side of Highway 41, also called Skokie Valley Road. So some background on this. This has been before the commission, I recall, at least twice. So the commission originally approved design review for the new dealership building and related facilities back in 2022. I also saw that this came before the commission earlier this year, but for sign variations. At the time, in 2022, there were no landscape or photometric lighting variations. The applicant did install light poles on the property that are 25 feet tall. The maximum height allowed in the B3 is 22 feet. So that's one variation the applicant is requesting. And then also landscaping variations that are tied based on some relocation of landscaping for a storm trap, and then for the primary entrance off of Skokie Valley Road, which I point out is an IDOT, that is an IDOT road. So for the photometric, which is exterior lighting, the variation is for the height of the poles. So these were approved to be the maximum allowed in the B3 Highway Commercial, which is 22 feet in height. The applicant installed poles at 25 feet in height. The applicant also requests to add an additional 25-foot tall light pole on the south, near the south property line, and relocate two of the poles that were already approved. The lighting complies, other than that, the lighting complies with the zoning code. It meets the 3000 Kelvin, color correlated temperature, the CCT. It meets the bug rating, which is the backlight, 3, uplight, none, 0, and then the glare of 3. Of course, in general, their bug ratings are allowed to be higher along the highway. So it does comply with those requirements. The variation is the variation to height. And this is an existing conditions photo. Landscaping, so this was in the packet. Essentially, it's it's to that 10-foot wide landscape buffer. So in this zoning district, there's a requirement for a 10-foot, I would say in depth, a 10-foot wide or 10-foot in-depth landscape buffer along the street, along the property line, along the street. In this case, the street is Highway 41. And so the applicant is showing gaps in that and is missing or asking to relocate 10 plants where the vehicular entrance is at. And I have a site plan to indicate that, as well as relocate 3 trees on the southeast corner. And again, I have a site plan on the next page to indicate that. And then number 2, there's a requirement in the code that when you have 10 or more parking spaces for vehicles, there has to be a landscape island. And because of how the site plan was reordered, there is a parking aisle along the Highway 41 that now has 10 or more spaces, where the applicant is asking for relief to not have that landscape island. So there's 2 plans. These were both in the packet. I just want to point out, so this shows relocation. So just to be clear, if this is approved, if the commission approves this, what the commission is approving 2 things for landscaping. There's also the exterior lighting variation as well for the pole height. For landscaping, the commission is approving the relocation of these plantings. Now you'll know it doesn't say specifically where, it says broadly where, and I'll come to that, but it does indicate relocation to general areas and also indicates relocation down here. And then the commission would also be approving this new amended landscaping plan. And so then this gets, I believe this is my last slide. So this gets to the recommended conditions of approval. And so 1, should the commission approve this, staff would recommend a condition that the color temperature, the CCT for all the lighting should be capped at 3,000 Kelvin. And then also as to the relocation, just a condition that the applicant must work with the city forester to appropriately relocate all the landscape plants and trees as depicted in the amended landscape plan. So basically the forester would assist and work with the applicant to make sure those get relocated in a way where they will survive. And that is the staff presentation. I can take questions if there are any.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission? Steve?
How did 25-foot poles get put on that site when they were never approved?
I have to defer to the applicant for that. This did come before the commission back in 2022.
Right, which the only condition at that time was the 3,000 Kelvin. There was no variation requested for 25-foot poles that I could find
I mean, you're right, correct.
in the packet or the minutes, so.
That was my comment. Anybody else with a comment?
That was my thought exactly.
Okay. All right, would the client like to, would the applicant like to come up and explain more about the changes that need to happen?
My name is Bob Ramsey.
If you could,
Right
Oh,
here, sir.
sorry, you have to come up to
Right here,
the,
sir.
the podium.
to the stand and state your name and spell your last name, please.
My name is Bob Remsing, Remsing.
All right,
I am the general contractor on the project.
okay,
So the direct answer to your question is the architect made a mistake.
okay,
So that's the fact. So it was approved at 20-foot poles. When the submittal was done to the architect for the lighting, it was done at 25-foot from the manufacturer of the light poles. The architect reviewed the submittal and missed it. Sent it back, approved. The product was ordered, the product was installed. Not until the lights were installed that we even became aware that it was a 25-foot pole versus the 20-foot pole.
okay. Tell us a little bit more about the landscaping changes too.
So the landscaping, that's kind of interesting because during this process, we had applied for Department of Transportation approval. We needed to hook up to their stormwater system, sewer system, and water system inside the right-of-way. We went back and forth numerous times with IDOT. Our first submittal to you, as Carl showed up here, is by and large where the entrance currently is. In the meantime, it was relocated approximately 70 feet to the south. There was a stacking issue that IDOT had. And the client said, fine, we'll move it to the south so we can get this project started. So we relocated it to the south, and I believe our IFC set, issue for construction set had the entrance at the southern 70-foot south. IDOT, we still didn't have our IDOT permit. IDOT came back, and then they had an issue with overland stormwater management. And they requested us to relocate the entrance back to the original spot, which we did. The changes we had to make were we can no longer put the island in between the right turn in and the right turn out. We also had to make substantial changes to the civil design. When the civil design was submitted to, the final civil design was submitted back to the city, the civil engineer did not include a revised landscape plan at that time.
Are we all concerned about the removing of the island between the incoming and outgoing traffic? From a safety standpoint?
No, I don't have an issue with it. I would defer that to planning.
Okay, do you have any other questions for the applicant?
Sorry, the loss of that island is related to the stormwater?
So there were actually two islands that were removed. There was a small island at the entrance, okay? And there was also an island in the middle of the south area of the parking. Well, where that island was, what the landscape designer did not pick up and the civil engineer didn't pick up on his review is underneath that, I have an underground storm trap made of concrete. So approximately 18 inches below the top of the asphalt, it's all concrete. And I had trees there and bushes. I can't install trees, so we need to relocate those trees and bushes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Carl, are we entertaining questions from the public?
Yes, so this is a public meeting, but in general, the commission is encouraged to take if there are public comments for design review as well.
Do we have any public comments? No questions from the public yet. All right, thank you. Carl, would you put up, all right, we have the conditions there. Let's see. Is this findings of fact that we're doing?
This is design review.
Design
So I
review.
think we just.
Okay.
That's right, design review with variations to the landscaping code and then to the exterior lighting code, which the commission is authorized to consider.
So if I could, I would move, we approve the design review with the variations to the lighting and the landscaping under the two conditions that the color temperature for the lighting is capped at 3,000 Kelvin and that the applicant must work with the city forester to appropriately relocate all the landscaping plants and trees as depicted.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Nanas. Do we have any more discussion on this?
Well, I'm still really unhappy about the 25-foot poles. I
wanted to address that too.
I want to understand there's a mistake made, but,
It's frustrating, regardless of what board you're sitting on, that the only compelling reason for approving that part of it is we messed up. Whether it's the contractor or the applicant, or in fact the city, as happened from time to time when I served on the zoning board. And we don't want to be punitive. That's not the purpose of this commission. But at the same time, the only compelling reason for doing it is we've already installed it and it's 25 feet and we want it to be uniform.
Right, I don't like that we're being put in a position of being asked for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. You know, I get that they're already there, I get that but I don't think that that's an appropriate way to handle variations, so.
Excuse me, Commissioner?
Yes.
I just would like to ask staff a question and
Sure.
related to our council also. Just because looking at it from the perspective of the city, isn't this something that through enforcement, the city should actually have been fining for? And I know you don't want to be punitive, but I'm wearing a council hat here. And, you know, you're asked to approve something that frankly kind of forced into.
Right.
And I want to know what the city, under these circumstances, they're in violation. Is there an enforcement mechanism here?
Yes, this is part of it. So the applicant is found to be out of compliance and they have to remedy the non-compliant situation. There's two ways to do that. One, change the poles. Two, get relief. If they don't get relief, they have to change the poles. So we stay our enforcement fines, et cetera, so long as the applicant is making a good faith effort to come into compliance. They've chosen this path. That's their choice. If they get the relief, then there's no more compliance issue with regard to that.
And
If they
how long have
don't,
the
then they will
poles-
need to do this.
And how long have the polls been up before they came to request relief?
I don't know.
I'm not aware of that.
They-
I'm sorry?
No, I don't know the answer to that right now.
I don't know. I'd have to.
Well, I'd like to know the answer to that. If it's a week, then they're doing their best to comply once they found
No,
out.
it's more than a week.
But if
They-
it's
they
a couple
rest-
of months
it's- Yeah.
and they're not in compliance, I want to know why the city hasn't enforced that.
I guess what we'd say is that we told them that they had the option to do this or change the polls, and they said that they would do this. So then we waited for an application, then we advertised it, noticed it. Yeah, so it takes
Okay.
about 2 months. If they don't follow through on an application, typically, if an applicant were to ignore us or we felt that they weren't operating in good faith, then yes, we would issue citations because they're not in compliance with the plans.
Well, and so my comment to you is, I think it's wonderful that they're moving forward in a compliant manner. That's great for, getting the project done. But for that period, what would be the fine enforcement? Were we to have done that?
There is no fine at this time. We have not issued a citation at this time. We've given, essentially, they've been on notice that they're in violation. They need to come into compliance.
Okay?
Sure.
Yes.
I want to make sure that the commission is focused on the standards that they have to meet, that the applicant has to meet when you consider whether to grant or not grant the application specific to the lighting poles. There is a standard that references that pertains to that. It's, light fixtures shall be of a scale and finish and shall be mounted at a height that are appropriate to the building design and lighting functions. And so the key question should be, do these 25-foot poles meet that particular standard? If, as Commissioner Henry stated, the point isn't really to be punitive, it's to determine whether the application as presented to you fits the standard. And if it doesn't, and you decide not to grant this application, then as Director Fontaine stated, they are forced to replace them with something that does fit within, their as of right light poles, the 20-foot high light poles. And if they don't, there's enforcement actions, there's fines and things like that. But I do want to make sure that we're considering the correct question. The poles presented before you, are those of a height, are those of a finish that would meet the standard for design review?
Well, Council, I have a question on that. Either it says it has to be 22 feet or less, or it says it has to be consistent with the property. It's one or the other. They can't be both.
Right.
So if the code says 22 feet, that by definition is what is consistent and uniform under the section that you cite, it seems to me.
Right, I think the application is requesting a variation.
No, I understand what you're saying, but are you saying that this is the standard for variation, or this is the standard for
Approval
the
of
22
design
feet?
review. This is the standard of the design review of which that variation is a part of. So I know that there's variations elsewhere in the code. Mind you, this is not the zoning ordinance. This does not come up in chapter 150. This is 176, design review. Variations have their own standard here, of which that's what we're really looking for here.
So if they'd come up with 35-foot poles, and we found that to be in
Right.
line with we could do that regardless of what the other section of the code says.
If it was at a height that you found, let me get that specific language, as a height that was appropriate, correct, that is, but you'd have to grant that variation within the design review.
But isn't by definition, what is appropriate is 22 feet, because that's what the code says.
That is what's set forth, but what's appropriate really, you gotta remember, each property is unique, right? And so by and large, what the code says is that 20-foot light poles across the city are what's appropriate. However, for a particular property, that might not be the case.
It's also what's appropriate now, unlike what was appropriate in 2022. I'm not sure that the 3 feet difference makes a lot of difference along the highway and in a car dealership like this.
I think as long as there's no light pollution or things like that.
It meets all the other requirements.
That's what we're here for.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to pass the design review. We have a second, correct? So, you want to call the roll?
Chair.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure I understood the motion. The motion was for the landscaping variations with the 2 staff conditions. Was that correct?
Yes.
And lighting.
And
Oh, it wasn't the lighting.
Or would you like us to handle them separately?
No, not at all. I was just making sure I heard it correctly and understood it. So the motion and the second was also for the lighting variations?
Yes.
Just making
Yes.
sure I understood it clearly. Thank you.
All right, so the commission, are we ready to vote on this? Okay. Director Fontaine, you may call the roll.
Commissioner Nanis.
Aye.
Commissioner Henry.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kirsch.
Aye.
Chair Moore.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The motion carries. This item was approved.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Our next item are multiple items that we will discuss together. Do we have a particular, do you want me to read out the?
Yes, so I have, might I make 2 quick comments, Chair?
Sure.
First of all, I would just like to ask if the applicant's team is ready for their, or if they would like a recess before their team is ready. If you could ask the applicant if they're ready for their, if their team is here, or if they need a short recess until their team is here.
Yeah, that's fine. Do we have all the library? People are here, okay.
Okay.
So are you ready for me to?
Yeah, so then my second comment would be, yes, when you open the public hearing, I would recommend that you open all 4 plus the design review as well.
Yes.
And take the items, they are separate actions, but to take testimony and to open the hearings concurrent.
Yes, I can.
If I phrased that correctly.
No, that's fine. I don't have like, sometimes we have like an official number with each of these. We don't this time, but.
Chair, I agree with Carl. I think that's the correct way. Just want to make sure that that's okay with the applicant.
Okay. All righty. So to begin, this is, as Mr. Burhap stated, there's 5 items at play here, but they all work together, so we would probably want to consider them together. So welcome to the regular meeting of the Highland Park Plan and Design Commission. My name is Karen Moore. A quorum of the Plan and Design Commission being present, the members of the Plan and Design Commission will now introduce themselves for the record from my right.
Ken Henry.
Steve Kirsch.
Josh Nanis.
Thank you. The Plan and Design Commission is charged with hearing applications for rezonings, plan developments, and subdivisions under the zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations of the City of Highland Park. In all matters, we recommend to the City Council based upon the testimony presented to us in the hearing. We are required to decide cases within 45 days after receipt of the transcript. All testimony is under oath. Both applicants and others who wish to speak on a particular case should present specific evidence as to why a proposal meets or fails to meet the standards for the relief requested. For clarity of our record, only one person at a time will speak, and all questions will be directed through the chair. We ask that you make every effort not to be repetitive in your testimony. Finally, we will make every effort to adhere to the schedule prepared. For tonight's hearing, if additional time is needed on a matter, it will be continued until the next available agenda. With that, I open the floor for the staff of the Plan and Design Commission to read into the record proof of publication and ownership.
Proof of publication and ownership are available for viewing at the Department of Community Development, 1150 Half Day Road in Highland Park.
All right, so let me read off the 5 items we're covering. Item 1 is zoning map amendment or rezoning to public activity district at 494 Laurel Avenue, 466 Laurel Avenue, 444 Laurel Avenue, 1755 Laurel Avenue, 1755 St. John's Avenue, 1707 St. John's Avenue, and the city parking lot southeast of Hazel Avenue and St. John's Avenue intersection. Number 2, a plat of re-subdivision with variations for 894 Laurel Avenue, 1755 Laurel Avenue, and 1755 St. John's Avenue.
494, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Number 3, a special use permit for a library conditional land use in addition at 494 Laurel Avenue, 1755 Laurel Avenue, and 1755 St. John's Avenue. Number 4, a special exception to the off-street parking and loading requirements for the library, 494 Laurel Avenue, 1755 Laurel Avenue, and 1755 St. John's Avenue. And finally, item 5, design review for an addition and exterior changes to the library at 494 Laurel Avenue, 1755 Laurel Avenue, and 1755 St. John's Avenue. All right, Mr. Burhop, take it away.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Just a preliminary item. I just wanted to be on the record that I served on the library board for 8 years, chaired it, or was president, chair or president, Rob, I don't remember. President for 2 years, although it's been about 10 years. It was a prior life, several commissions ago. But I don't feel that there's any conflict of interest and that I can carry out my responsibility as a member of this commission.
Thank you. Thank you for your service to the library.
I'd like to think it was good service.
All right, whenever you're ready, Carl.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Carl Burhop. I'm a senior planner with the City of Highland Park with the Planning Division and the Community Development Department. This is a presentation for various requests that include a rezoning, which is also referred to as a zoning map amendment because it's amending the zoning map, a plat, which is for the plat of re-subdivision, a special use permit, a special exception and design review. Okay, so the commission should hear the staff presentation, open the public hearing, take testimony from the applicant, take testimony from the public, deliberate, and may continue or direct findings of fact to a future meeting. So there are essentially, well, this project is multi-pronged, but there are 2 main elements. So there's the Highland Park Public Library project for an addition onto the existing library building. And then there are several zoning and plat actions related to that. Concurrent, the city and the park district owned properties are also requesting to rezone to public activity, which similarly matches the public activity rezoning request by the library. So I just want to be clear on the distinctions there. And so what is in red stripe, that is the library right there. They're proposing an addition onto the property to the west there. And then these other parcels were actually, as you probably all know, we're right here right now. These other blue parcels are requested to be rezoned to public activity to match the library's proposed rezoning.
As I stated in the staff report, project was broadly discussed at several committee of the whole, COTW, committee of the whole meetings previously. And I had those links in the staff report that's posted online. So again, there's 5 actions that are before the commission. The first is a rezoning to public activity district, and this is for library, park district, and city-owned properties. And there's the plat of subdivision by the library, the special use permit by the library, special exception for off-street parking relief by the library, the design review by the library. The commission is a design review decision maker. The commission is a recommendation body on the other items, where the city council is the final decision maker. In terms of land use analysis, so there's just talking about the rezoning for a moment. So you see the white dashed line around all the properties that are proposed to be rezoned. So the library, speaking about the library only, if you go to our zoning code, the land use library is a conditional use in the PA, the public activity district. It's actually not allowed in any other zoning district, including what is currently zoned. These properties here are currently, my point here, these properties right here, currently rezoned R5. And so City Hall and the library are non-conforming land uses. And so the rezoning for the library is actually necessary for their expansion, and it's necessary to consider the request because it's just not allowed in the current zoning district. And so the SUP, the special use permit, which I'll come to next, allows that expansion. Rezoning the other properties that are park district and city-owned, such as City Hall here, brings these properties into better conformance with the zoning code because these are government properties with government land uses. Okay, so to come back to the library, so the proposed addition is on, I don't know, I'm pointing off to the library, I guess, but the proposed addition is going to the west side of the existing library facing St. John's Avenue and then having frontage on Laurel Avenue as well. So approximate 7,850 square foot addition. If rezoned, what is proposed will comply with the setbacks. There is a 25-foot setback along the north property line, and then 0 along the west and the south. That indicates what the proposed setbacks are. I believe it's 37.2 feet along the north at the closest point, and 28.9 feet along the west at the closest point. There was additional analysis on the setbacks in the staff report. Height and elevations, I have 2 slides. Again, these are exhibits provided by the applicant's team, the library's team. If that's hard to read, again, all of these are in the posted packet online where you can zoom in and out. What those bullet points refer to, though, is they refer to the materials that are proposed, and design review is part of the request. So this elevation here is the west elevation that faces St. John's. And so I will point out that there's mechanical equipment proposed, but it will be screened by this element here. And then I believe the color is cottonwood. Yeah, that's right. The color proposed is cottonwood and the materials to be rough stone composition. We also propose 1 sign above the entrance. And then the height also complies. The maximum limit in the PA district is 35 feet. I believe this is 32.5. This is the north facade facing Laurel, and I believe that's the existing, this is the existing library here. And then once my mouse gets here, this is where it becomes the addition. So this is the special exception. I believe this is my most ready slide, so I'll just go through it real quick. Current occupant load, 655. That means there's currently 164 required off-street parking spaces, off-street meaning on the site. The library plus the addition occupant load will be 815. That means there will be 204 required spaces per the zoning code for this type of land use. The library is providing 50 off-street, on-site parking spaces. That means it's already, right now, non-conforming with respect to the zoning code by 114 spaces. And I believe the library got in more to their history in their narrative that was in the packet. And of course, the applicant's team here, if you want to have, there's any questions by the commission about the library and how long it's been here and how long it's existed. So the relief request is the incremental request, because right now that's just existing non-conforming and allowed to continue. But the incremental request of 40, so that's the additional that must be provided. Right, 164 to 204. It goes up by 40 spaces for the addition. And so the applicant provided a parking study that was in the packet, and that their consultant indicated what they thought was necessary and what was available. And then this just summarizes that. There's 276 spaces, of which 11 are accessible according to the applicant's parking studies, and that just lists the 13 and 28 spaces on street parking, and then nearby 143 public garage parking spaces and 42 public parking at the north train lot spaces. Oh yeah, then the aforementioned 50 on site. And then this is also, again, to give context, this is a downtown development, existing developed sites. There's access to transit, nearby parking. And the city did review the consultant's parking study, the planning division, the public works department, including the engineering division, and then the police department reviewed it and had no objections to the library's consultant's report. Two things on this slide. So landscaping and exterior lighting. Well, my exterior lighting comment is relatively straightforward. I just had one note that one of the library's lights includes an uplight, and they should just clarify if they'll just, find a new light to eliminate that, or if they want that to be a relief request before the commission. And as for landscaping, by code requirements, they exceed the code requirements, though I will point out, as the commission looks at that, the commission should reflect on all the standards of approval, including the special use permit standards that get to, impact on the neighborhood, as well as the design review standards. And so it's hard for me when I put these site plans, and again, these are in the packet, available for review, to zoom in. And so this is just a snip. And I know it will be hard to see on these screens, but the applicant proposes shrub plantings here. This is along the west facade of the addition. And then there are 5-foot in-depth foundation plantings along the north, the west, and the south. And there were counts, of course. This count here only counts what's required versus what the applicant is proposing new. The applicant, of course, broke it down more in the packet with what's existing and remaining as well. There are no variations being requested for landscaping. Subdivision review, 3 comments. Again, this table was in the packet, it was in the report. So there is a technical element of relief requested for the lot shape. I'll point out that the lot shape one is, it's this bend right here. That actually goes all the way back to the original 1869 plat, the first plat for the city. So that's a pre-existing condition, but it is technically an element of relief requested. The lot line does run through, as proposed, does run through the Stupi cabin and an existing shed. It was pointed out in the report that the applicant and city staff are working to resolve how that should change. And then there was a comment that the applicant should add an easement for the relocated utilities. You may have seen in the preliminary civil drawings, they're building the addition over 2 existing utilities, but then those are proposed to be relocated, obviously, so they're not building over those. I think this is my last slide. So yeah, as I already stated, the commission should open the public hearing, take testimony, deliberate, direct as appropriate. As I already stated, is a recommendation body for all the requests except for the design review. And then, again, these are just the 5 actions that are before the commission, and those are just the code citations, and I had the hyperlinks in the report to the appropriate standards of approval. I can take questions if there are any.
Do we have any questions so far?
There are 6 addresses here, correct, that we're dealing with?
For the rezoning?
For the zoning, yeah.
Yeah, for the
Can you
rezoning,
tell me what's at each of those addresses? Because I don't understand what coincides with what.
okay, so these are the two addresses on well, here, one second. Yep, I'll answer, one moment here. Let me see them and then I can just go through it one by one. This won't take long at all. Okay, thank you. Okay, so these two properties, so these would be 494 and 466 Laurel Avenue. They are these two right here. Those properties are currently vacant. Those two. And then this property is the 494 Laurel Avenue. This is the library. It's on two parcels. And then this parcel here in the corner, it's vacant right now except for accessory structures. That goes by either 1755 Laurel or it also goes by 1755 St. John's. That's a vacant property. This one right here is the Rose Garden property. That's 1755 St. John's. I only have two properties left. This is 1707 St. John's. That's City Hall. Obviously, that's where we're at right now. Then the last property doesn't have an address in here because it doesn't have an address. It says city parking lot southeast of Hazel Avenue and St. John's Avenue intersection. So this is that parking lot that's at the southeast of that intersection. It's the Hazel parking lot.
So everything along Laurel is owned by the library board?
These two properties to the east here are owned by the city.
By the city?
These two parcels are owned by the library. Then the one that the addition is proposed to go on is currently owned by the Park District.
Okay.
And the city owns the other one.
There really can't be a 1755 Laurel there because that's
That's
the
what
400 block of Laurel.
That's what it comes up as when you Google map it, whether that's right or not. It's very
It's just,
confusing.
it's very confusing. Okay.
Well, this is one of those properties that it doesn't have an address, but it's also connected to 1755 St. John's as well.
Because it's on the corner.
And then on the re-subdivision, what's
Yes, sir?
what's being, I'm not clear on that. What's being subdivided
So these
besides the stupid cabin?
these three parts, the way the subdivision is in the packet, and obviously it may change slightly depending on how the line is redrawn around the shed and the stupid cabin, but as it was submitted in the packet, it is, well, as it was submitted in the packet, it's pretty much, it's exactly this red dashed line, which is the library parcel here, the library parcel here, then the currently Park District owned property where the addition is going right here. Because of the five requests before the commission, the rezoning, again, is for all of these in the blue shade.
Right.
And the rest, the special use permit, the special exception, the design review, and what's the one I'm missing? Oh, the plat of re-subdivision. That's connected, those four are connected only with the library.
So there's no re-subdivision in any of the others? Okay.
That's correct, except for to the extent that the south line may be withdrawn slightly to the north or slightly to the south, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Commissioner Nanis?
Yeah, question. In regards to the zoning to public access, why hasn't this been considered at any point in the past? Like, why are we doing this now? If it's been like non-conforming, the library's been, was touched in 71, and there's been other times you've redone the zoning, like what has why wasn't it ever changed?
It's a good question. The PA zoning district was, kind of thought of early on in the 2000s, and it was implemented in many cases. Across the street it was. I really don't know exactly. It was intended to be for all publicly owned lands, right? So you've got your park districts, you got your city, school districts, et cetera, so forth. And so what the city has done is it's taken it upon itself where it sees these opportunities to do these broader rezonings we have. So for the Aqua Park, for instance, with the headquarters of the fire department right next door, when they did their building back there behind the water park, we did a broader rezoning of that area that included the fire headquarters. It's in line with what the intention of that district was to be, and it makes sense. Our own 1150 Half-Day Road is zoned PA, and so, that's the answer. It's not very satisfying, but that's where it is.
Yeah, I just find it so odd that like City Hall of all places
Yeah,
isn't properly
I
zoned.
agree, and that the library needs to get zoning to be the library. Yep, I understand. So here we are.
Well, I feel like the way it was explained to us when we did the Ravinia Fire Station was that the PA was a newer zone. So as we deal with the properties that this applies to, we're catching it. So
That's
we're
what
not
we've done.
taking, I mean, maybe if we got really bored sometime, we would take all the public access properties and then put them through this meeting and change. But now we handle it on a case-by-case basis as we're dealing with those properties.
And where the districts that are involved are consenting. That's important to know, right? So that's also part of it as well. So for instance, little 7-Eleven Lincoln, the school district owned and sold, that's zoned residential, not PA. And so that can now be developed as a residential development. If it was PA, it would not have been. So again, we work with our sister agencies, and where we see these opportunities, we've been implementing this, and that's been a consistent theme throughout my tenure here. It's good. And we've done several.
And Chair, can I add one more thing?
Sure.
And this was in the staff report. I just wanted to point out that this is not a planned development. There was no automatic trigger for this to be a planned development, and the applicant is not asking for any bulk relief, such as setbacks and height. I just wanted to point that out. And that was in the report, of course.
Yes, it was, thank you. All right, any more questions for staff? Would our applicant like to come up and tell us more about it?
Do you want your presentation?
Oh, and then I'll need to swear you in when you're ready.
Real quick, so you can just use the arrows. Okay.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Up at one time?
Yes, we can do that if everyone will swear in.
Stand up.
Sorry, why don't you stand up so I can see who everybody is, and I won't, okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do.
Wonderful. Please state your name and spell your last name for our note taker.
Thank you, Chair Moore. My name is Hal Frank, F-R-A-N-C-K-E. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Meltzer, Pertil, and Stell. It's nice to be back before you this evening on behalf of the Highland Park Public Library. First of all, we thank Carl for the very thorough report. We're going to try not to duplicate that much what he says, all of which he has said. We're going to try to supplement and add to. And we have our own short presentation here, and we have a team here that I will briefly introduce to you if I do this correctly. So Heidi Smith is with us. She's the executive director. Some of you may know her, hopefully know her. Darren Schroeder, who is a principal with Studio GC and the project manager for the project. Scott Delano is the design principal, also with Studio GC. Josh Anderson is the landscape architect with Erickson Engineering Associates. Erickson has also done the civil engineering for the project. And finally, Michael Worthman is here from KLOA Inc., which was the firm retained to do the parking study and analysis in support of the special exception that has been requested for the library. A couple of preliminary comments. Some of you may be aware of the fact that we are before you this evening because each of the Park District, the city, and the library have approved the execution of an intergovernmental agreement which contemplates the transfer of lands owned by the Park District right now to either the city or the library. And the consummation of those transfers is contingent upon all necessary zoning and other governmental approvals being obtained before the actual transfer goes forward. The application that is before you this evening, as Carl indicated, involves not just the library's lands that we're talking about this evening, but the ones that are of interest to the city as well. I'm only here representing the Park District. You have your own attorney representing the city. But I will add a little bit to what Carl talked about when he talked about the relief that's been asked for. Again, this is the subject property, and you'll see here we've made clear that the subject property is both the city property in certain respects, you'll hear as we go through the presentation, and the library property, and in other respects, we're only talking about the library property. And I'm going to go through the elements of relief in a minute, as Carl did, and maybe I'll try to, at least from the library standpoint, answer some of the questions that you've already asked. So we are seeking a rezoning, both the library and the city, as you heard Carl say, to the PA Public Activity District. And so one of the legal standards you need to consider is the surrounding zoning and surrounding uses of the land that has been proposed for rezoning. There are a number of standards for that. As you also heard, the library, which is not acknowledged or authorized as a permitted use or a special use in the existing R5 zoning district, it is an authorized special use in the PA district. So subject to proving up certain standards for the grant of or approval of a special use, the library can move forward as a special use library. Those standards are in your packet. We're not going to go through them one by one, but the key standard when you're considering a rezoning is the compatibility of what's being proposed to the existing surrounding and zoning. And given the fact that the property is principally surrounded by the R5 to the east, or R1 and R5, and you see the B5 on the other side of Laurel, and the fact that the east and south are R5, none of that is changing. We believe that what is being proposed, most notably because of the land use, is appropriate. What is being proposed for rezoning, that is, to the Public Activity District. Now, to give a little more clarity on that, that is the first element of relief that's been asked for. Let me give you a little more detail as to why. The question is, why has it not been done before? Which, as Joel said, is a very good question. I can only give you a little more color on this from a legal standpoint as it relates to the library. As you know from the letter that Heidi Smith wrote that's in your package, you know, the library has been operating here for a very, very long time. 93, 94 years to be exact. The city, as you know, adopted a new zoning code back in 1968, and the library has existed there in the R5 district. It's been zoned R5, where a library is not a permitted use. It's not an authorized special use. It's existed there for over 50 years as a legal non-conforming use. Your code has provisions that says you can maintain a legal non-conforming use, and, you know, subject to certain limitations, you can even rebuild a legal non-conforming use or structure in the event of a casualty loss of certain proportions, but you cannot expand a legal non-conforming use, and that is exactly what we're doing here, is proposing an expansion to the library, which is a legal non-conforming use. So what we're doing after all these decades is eliminating the library's status as a legal non-conforming use by requesting and hopefully obtaining a special use permit. That makes it a legal use in the district, and you can only obtain that special use if the property is zoned PA Public Activity District. So that is why we're seeking the rezoning. Again, as to the library property, that's why we're seeking the rezoning to the PA district, and that is why we're seeking the special use permit, i.e. so that it can be expanded. Now, the next question that I wanted to get to, I talked about the conditional use permit. You've heard about the required, the special exception that's required for parking, which Michael Worthman from KLOA will address briefly. We're obviously going to talk about the design review request. The last request of the 5 requests that Commissioner Kirsch, you asked about, and I want to clarify that, is the request for re-subdivision. I think and again, I'm only talking about the library property, which I'm going back to the image that Carl pointed to, and again, I'm only looking at the part that I think that's in red, which is the library property. It's a little misleading that we're calling this a re-subdivision, because what we're really doing is consolidating the existing lots. But under your code, a plat of consolidation, and legally, not just in Highland Park, but all over, a plat of consolidation is considered a form of subdivision. So if you look, and this is also in your packet, of course, if you look at the plat of consolidation that is in your packet, you'll see the underlying existing lots that the library sits on right now, and then you'll see written over it as Lot 1. It's all being consolidated into one lot. And that is because for decades, the city of Highland Park has always required that a building sit on its own legal lot of record. This goes back decades and decades. And so if this all goes forward in the manner that's been proposed, at the end of the day, the library will now sit on its own legal lot of record called Lot 1 in the Highland Park Library subdivision. When people in the future look on the map, they'll see those lines that you're seeing now on the library parcel go away. So that is why we're seeking a re-subdivision. It's not a re-subdivision in the conventional sense that we're, chopping up land into multiple lots. It's actually the opposite. And then my last comment before we go into the presentation is the issue that Carl talked about with the Stoopy cabin and the shed. As you saw, the proposed lot line right now for this plat of consolidation goes right through the middle of those improvements. And as Carl said, we've been talking to Corporation Counsel's office about how the city wants to deal with that. Do we do the lot line as proposed and create an easement so that, because nothing's going to move there? Or do we, before this gets finalized and a plat gets recorded, do we modify the lot line so that that sits entirely on its own parcel and it doesn't show a lot line running through the property? That has yet to be resolved. As Carl indicated, we're talking to the city about that. It's just something that needs to be worked out, kind of like a technicality. With that, if I could, I'd like to turn the podium over to Heidi Smith, the executive director, who I thought it would be helpful if she walked through in a little bit of detail for your benefit and the benefit of the public, how we got to this evening and what the library's goals are and what the library did relative to community engagement and what the goals are with the expansion. So with that,
Wonderful.
Heidi Smith.
Thank you. And then you can state your name and spell your last name when you're ready.
It's all gonna be up here. You can control it with this. Okay, but it's also right in front of you.
Okay, thank you, Hal.
Okay.
Heidi Smith, SMITH. I'm the Executive Director of the Highland Park Public Library.
Great, thank you.
And thank you to the commission for your support this evening, we hope. Okay. For project background, how did we get here? The library heard loud and clear over 20 years ago and in the 20 years following from library patrons with feedback about the facilities and service and the need for more. The library completed a comprehensive facility needs assessment with public input in preparation for this project. In 2020, an interior renovation was completed, which addressed some of the needs that had been identified in the facility needs assessment. Now that that work has done and the community has been benefiting from the improvements, we want to move forward as in our strategic plan that was created with community input, that we prioritize the remaining needs identified by the community and the library board. The proposed project would be completed in 2025 and 2026, and it is specifically designed to meet demand for space and services, as I'll outline with the next slide. The library has a great need to improve their overall accessibility of the building. Our ADA compliant elevator is a necessity. Our current elevator is not fully ADA compliant. Neither are any of our public restrooms fully ADA compliant. Some are partial, and that has served the community in the interim, but we feel very strongly, speaking on behalf of the library board, that accessibility to the public library is paramount. Our youth services department, we need more space to play and learn. In comparison with other libraries that serve communities of our size, we are woefully undersized in our youth services and how we support and invest in the future of Highland Park. In terms of historical preservation, the library currently houses collections curated not only by the library, but also by the Historical Society of Highland Park, now owned by the City of Highland Park, in a space that is inadequate to support the materials on the whole, including the physical conditions required to preserve our heritage, namely humidity and temperature control. So we would have an expanded and improved archive to meet the needs for historical preservation for the community at large. In terms of meeting spaces, the library needs larger, more flexible rooms to better support both library programming and community use of the spaces. This plan meets that need as well. In addition, in the 21st century, there is so much technology that is happening in our schools and in our public libraries. And in creating a creative workshop as part of the project, the library would be bringing cutting-edge equipment and support to our community, and it would be available and accessible every hour the library is open, 69 hours a week. And we see this as a huge boon for the community. Do you have any questions for me about the priorities or the background before I move on?
Any questions about that? No.
Okay. I think, is this where I turn it back over to Darren? Okay. Darren Schroeder of Studio GC Architects would join us now at the podium.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Could you, I guess we already have the spelling, why don't you spell your name for us for the audio? The first, I need your first name and your last name spelled.
My name is Darren Schroeder, and my last name is spelled SCHRETTER, and Darren is DARREN.
Great, thank you.
I will be brief. Most of what my points are were part of the original presentation by Carl, but I wanted to just explain that this is a single-story building. It is composed of gable roofs and a flat roof area. As discussed, there is going to be a rooftop unit that will sit on the roof. And then the exterior envelope and its design is going to be further detailed and discussed later in the presentation by my associate. The image on the screen is the zoning exhibit that was part of the packet that was submitted. We did analyze the entire site and this project with the PA district in mind. We are not seeking any variances. All of the setback requirements, the FAR requirements, the building height requirement, all met the listed requirements in the zoning ordinance. And we have positioned the building specifically to tie into the existing building. So the setback matches along the front. And then we look to maximize as much space between the west property line and the building. And then also while saving as much of the garden space in the back, which has the fountain and has the nice view for the 1974 addition. That is all that I needed to elaborate on the, because the parking components will be discussed later in the presentation by Michael. So I'm going to bring Hal back up.
Thanks, Darren. Next, we have our landscape plan. Josh Anderson is here to answer, the landscape architect, any questions you have. But you pretty much heard all the details from Carl on that. So I'm going to jump ahead and turn the floor over to the project architect, Scott Delano, from also Studio GC, and he can walk you through, again, a little more of the detail and the materials and that kind of information.
Wonderful.
You can.
Hi, if you'll spell your last name.
So it's Scott Delano, D-E-L-A-N-O.
Okay.
So thank you again. Everyone has thanked you. I'm going to thank you as well for allowing us to present this to you. I want to talk a little bit about the overall approach here was to provide something that was familiar, but not the same. Something that was obviously part of the library and acknowledges all of the parts of the library.
Oh, this is the one.
So the initial building had an addition which mimicked it near identically. Then in the 1970s, you got one that was an addition that was of the time that it was made, which had some very specific references back to the building, which architects would know were references, but I'm not sure everyone else realized were references back to the building, right? So in this regard, we're looking at a building that is sympathetic to those as well. One of the strongest elements of the existing building is the Brenner Room, which is this gable form that has beautiful space inside and outside. It has a very familiar shape and feel to it. And so that's what we're looking to recreate in terms of the proportion and the size. So these house forms that we're looking at are identical in proportion to the Brenner Room. So that is an extension of that building and serves as a parenthesis for the overall street face. So that which you have at the Brenner Room, you also have facing St. John's. It was very intentional that those match to complete that thought. So here we're looking at St. John's elevation. You're seeing the end of that house form, which is the meeting rooms. There's an area that steps back and is relatively quiet. You can see that there's a little bit of detail and relief in the stonework. That relief is the same proportion and rhythm as the 1970s addition that you can see just to the far right. So it acknowledges that that exists, whereas the previous one didn't acknowledge the building and try to bring it together. So we're really trying to make this a unified whole. And then we have the additional house form that turns a corner, and that is the children's. So in this way, we're looking at the stone itself being a stone that matches the existing stone. Now, a couple of quick notes on that. We have the samples here. So the existing building was made of Lannon stone, and we could get more Lannon stone, but as you dig through and quarry, the color and the overall texture of stone changes the more that you take out of a quarry. You can also find within the same quarry pretty stark differences between high in that geological form and low in that geological form. So you'll see more variation either on top ledge or bottom ledge. When we investigated the building, the addition to the west doesn't actually match the original building. You have to look very closely to see that it's different, which we look very closely at all of the stone because we're going to be touching that stone. So the stone that we're proposing matches the addition because that's what it will be in physical proximity to. So we did several studies of what that stone looked like, what the ratio was of smooth to rough to bed face to chisel face. And we're recreating that. What we are not recreating is the installation method. So instead, we're using a coursed installation rather than ashlar. Ashlar looks more, it's balanced, but it is not regular. And so the coursed is regular. This both separates the building from the previous one, so that if they're, as over time, these will age differently because they are different buildings. So it doesn't look like we tried really hard and missed. There's an obvious and intentional direction to make sure that it is sympathetic, but not trying to be the same. Because in 5 years' time, you'll tell us that we screwed up. So we're trying to make sure that we're being sensitive to the fact that when we do this, this is something that lasts for a long time and it will move and change over its lifetime. But we wanted to do it in a way that acknowledges and befriends the building that it's adding on to. So going on to the next slide. So here we have the Laurel Street elevation. You can see how that house form serves as a bookend. So now this is a complete thought where you have a beginning and an end to this building as it were. And we have again in between the two volumes where they touch, we have that wall set back a little bit, and that is again smoother stone, not trying to recreate what's beside it, but creating a little relief between them. So that way it feels more comfortable. And then here we are on the rose garden side. So you can see the rhythm as we come across another point where the children's area, the long vertical windows, those are the same proportion and size as the 1970s edition. And that's what they're looking at. So when you're in the rose garden, these two know each other. And it's a way to bring those pieces together. And then the renderings, so here we are at the corner of St. John's and Laurel. Here we are, Stoopy Cabin is just to our right. You can see the shadow of Stoopy Cabin. So you can see how that looks looking down towards the garden area. And then here we are on St. John's with the proposed plantings. So it's a mix of high and low with a series of things to, now, this is not a new entry. There is a meeting room access, but not a meeting room entry. And it's important to make that distinction. We don't want to confuse people to make them think we've built this and now this is the new main entry. The main entry stays where it is on Laurel. So this is simply here so that we have adequate access if the meeting rooms are being used separately, so that people can get in and out without having to keep the whole library open if there's no need to. So here's the stone match. So Darren held up earlier, and we'll ask his shoulders to hold out for a second. So these boards are the boards that are represented, and you can see the dots represent the different types. So color 1 and color 2 were the two items he was holding up. One is the top ledge, the other is the bottom ledge of the same quarry. The top ledge has less variation in color, the bottom ledge has much more variation in color. Your building has a combination of more monotone and pops of color. So we did a quick analysis of several wall sections, including the one that's shown here, indicating which were the different types of finish: bed face, chisel, hammer, smooth. And we've recreated those proportions from the existing building into the way that we're installing the stone. So the ratio shown here matches the ratio of the stone on the building. So it'll be a natural complement to the building that's there. And that concludes that portion. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No, but can we see the stone sample,
Absolutely.
please? Do we need to touch it or anything like that? Or are we good at looking at it? And that is actual stone, it's not a manufactured stone?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And is that the smooth finish on the top?
Yep. Yeah, the top center is the smooth finish.
Okay. Okay.
And then it's almost sort of a diamond on the
I
board.
see, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you. And what are those other, and the other two pieces are?
Large samples.
Just larger
Yeah,
samples?
larger samples of the same stone,
Okay. All right, thank you.
just in case you really wanted to touch it.
Well, you know, sometimes we do.
Yeah, of course.
All right, on to the parking then?
Excellent.
I only have one slide. Good evening. My name is Michael Worthman, Werthmann. I'm a principal with the firm of Koenig Lindgren O'Hara Abuna Inc., or KLOA. I've been practicing for 35 years now, and I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Illinois. We were retained to provide a parking study, parking evaluation for the proposed expansion. As Carl indicated, we have several different parking lots that are used, or parking facilities by the library now. The library has a total of 50 spaces on site and another 13 on Laurel that is adjacent to the library. So there's a total of 63 spaces adjacent to the library building. In addition, the parking deck, the east parking deck, is located kitty corner to the library. That has a total of 134 parking spaces, 3-hour parking spaces. In addition, there is 79 parking spaces along St. John's and in the train lot, the north portion of the train lot. So there's approximately 276 total parking spaces within a short walking distance of the library. As we all know, we're in downtown, lots of parking available. What we did is we went out last October and performed parking surveys at all of these facilities. They were done on a weekday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., on a Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and on a Sunday from 1 to 5 p.m. So we went in every hour, counted the number of parked vehicles in each lot, each deck, and then compared that to the inventory of parking. And what we found out is, for the majority of the time, those 63 spaces, which are adjacent to the library, generally has sufficient parking to accommodate the additional demand that will be from the expansion. There are a few hours during the middle of the day on a weekday and some on Saturday. I actually drove today by there, and there was only about 5 spaces available. So there are some times, but for the most part, those 63 spaces should be sufficient. In the parking deck, where we had 134 spaces, at any time during our surveys, there was 55 spaces available. So there's more than sufficient parking available within the area. There was even more parking available along the streets, St. John's, and in the train parking lot. So from a parking standpoint, the fact that we're in downtown, that we can share these parking lots, there's more than enough parking to accommodate the expansion. And I'm here to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a
Oh, hang on, we got a question here.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Henry has a question.
Unfortunately, I'm plagued by a certain amount of knowledge. Back in the day, the library had an agreement with the parking lot on the north side of Laurel. And there was a time, and the reason why that went by the wayside is, frankly, with all due respect to our council person here, the city council said they weren't going to pay for the library to rent that parking lot or parts of that parking lot. I notice in the report that the majority or a large majority of the participants at the library are 65 and older. Was any consideration given to, again, cutting a deal with the owner of that lot north of the library? And you may not be the appropriate person to answer that. I get it.
I'm going to pass the torch on that one.
And the other part of it is, did the library consider using those 2 lots to the east, which it fought to buy over a long period of time, or actually the city bought over a long period of time, that now the city owns? Was any consideration given to that, to your knowledge?
I'm going to I have no knowledge of that,
Okay.
so I will pass it on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you're the right person to
No,
answer that.
thank you.
Yes, come on up.
Thank you very much. To answer the first question first, the library did not pursue rental spaces in that lot at this time. Coming down that grade and crossing Laurel there without, or needing to go to the corner to cross, we did not put that on the list of priorities to explore as it wasn't a perfect fit in our view. In addition, this predates me, but I understand that in analyzing the two city lots to the east of the library, that there was concern from residents and perhaps members of the council as well. Again, please forgive my guesstimates here in some ways, that adding additional asphalt was not welcome when the parking garage across the street had so much parking available. And in addition, that changing the traffic pattern there, although it's right next door to the existing lot, was not favored by the neighborhood. So at this time, we did not pursue additional parking in either of those areas.
Thank you. Director Fontaine?
Also, the lot across the street, I mean, the development there does have parking requirements as well. And so, when you're doing
Right,
things
they
like
have
that,
to
yeah.
provide parking for their own businesses.
Correct. So,
And then-
in terms of special exceptions, you'd still probably be presented a special exception because if you're using their parking for the library, then they have a parking shortage.
Right, then they don't
So
have enough.
You just
Yeah.
didn't do the math on it, but it's,
Right, no, it
given the
makes
size of
sense.
it and the buildings there, it's
Yeah.
utilized for that.
Okay, so yes. Yes, please do.
I do want to
Councilmember
recap that I do think you have put it perfectly in terms of response as far as additional asphalt and the desires of the council or in general, the public, what we've heard. So I think that's a completely accurate description. I would say, since we do these kinds of things with a vision to the future, do you think you'll have adequate parking for the life of what we would call the building or the extension? And I don't know if you're looking at a 20-year or 50-year or how you currently view that, but do you think you will be okay, I guess is the question.
Well, my crystal ball isn't super clear on that, but I will tell you what my hope is. My hope is that with this expanded space, we see a great increase in people utilizing the space in the library, which may then create a need for parking that is not conceived of in this plan because it doesn't yet exist. I hope that that's a challenge that we'll be able to solve together. At this time, I can't say for certain, but
has it
it's
been
possible.
considered to some degree? I mean, I know you're saying that for today it's adequate, but if you're increasing your usage by a factor of whatever, are you taking into account that?
So part of the concept with the Western Addition, in that entrance that's not an entrance, as Scott shared, is that, let's say that is our early voting location. And we'd be very pleased to welcome back Lake County to have an early voting location here in the new meeting room. That entrance could be utilized as an entrance and exit for early voting. Could even be a polling place on election day for people to come in and out. And the proximity of that door to the Metro lot across the street, to the city parking garage diagonal across the street is closer than if the parking would be on the far east side of the library. So unless parking habits in the city lot and the Metro lot change significantly concurrently with what I hope will be increased use of the library, I think it should be adequate to meet the need. but, anything is possible, and I hope I think it'd be a good problem to have. But that proximity there, I think is a great benefit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, come on up to the microphone so we can hear you.
It's an excellent question, and we all hope the library is going to be very successful. One thing is, given the downtown nature of it, you're going to get a lot of interaction. So you're going to have people that are eating downtown that will also go to the library. So it helps reduce some of that parking demand, or they're shopping and they're going to the library. But more importantly, you have several great assets here already from a parking standpoint that are, from our counts and from what we understand, are very underutilized. So until someday that those become, you have a parking issue there, I would rather use these than put more pavement in, as we've all indicated. And particularly now with remote work, we all know that metro parking is much lower than it is and all of that. So we're really comfortable in the fact that there's sufficient parking available within your downtown. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you very much. That concludes our presentation. Obviously, we're happy to answer any additional questions you have.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Any questions? All right, does anyone from the public have any questions or comments? Okay, please come up to the podium. Okay, and first I want to swear you in. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name and spell your last name.
Sure. My name is Margot Sayer, Sayer. I live in the property directly east of that 466 or 446 property you guys are talking about. Longtime Highland Park resident. For the last 18 years I've lived there with my husband and my 4 kids. So a couple questions. What does the rezoning to the public, the PA, allow? Like, what could it possibly turn into in the future? My first question. A little history, back when this first happened, the 2 properties that were there were owned by a family, and they wanted to transition one of the homes into their orthodontist practice, and it was refused by the city because they said they can't rezone a residential property to a business. So why now can we rezone a residential property to a PA property? And then something you guys said earlier was about non-conforming land uses. So what's the protection to the residents that live directly next to property that you're going to rezone now to PA when it's our residential homes and property? Like, what are the concessions that are made, or what's the barriers? I don't know the proper terms, but what do you put into place to protect the homeowners and the residents in the neighborhood? And then my other question is, if the property is rezoned and it gets approved, and then you decide to do something with that green space, will there be another meeting? Or is it basically saying if it gets rezoned, you all can do whatever you want, whenever you want with it? That's kind of the concern of the neighborhood and everyone that kind of lives on that side.
Okay. Well, even though I know if it's PA, a lot of these are still conditional uses, in which case the use needs to come back to our board. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'll have Director Fontaine fill in more about what.
Including the library use that's now before the commission. So in a similar fashion of that there are a number of uses that are allowed in the zoning district, whether they're allowed by right or by conditional use permit. The special use process is a public hearing process. So the library is a conditional use, for instance.
Is there like a list of what the
Yep,
possibilities
there is,
could be?
and Carl will
Okay.
pull that up.
It'd be great to know, like, are we talking about a building getting built? You know, I understand the parking study, but what could possibly pop up next to my home is kind of a concern when you talk about rezoning a neighborhood area, a residential area that in the past was refused to be rezoned because it was residential.
To a business zoning district, right.
Sure.
Yes.
But I don't know the
Yeah,
difference
right.
between a business zoning district and the PA.
Can I make 2 comments, Chair?
Yes, please.
So first of all, I'm happy if the resident reaches out to me and discusses this further. And if the resident has time, be happy to give my card and discuss this further and in more depth and in more detail. when the resident has time. That's number one. Number two, in general, the public activity district, and I'm just scrolling through it, it's actually pretty restrictive.
Yeah.
It really, and again, this is a general statement, right? Because the question, what can be done? That is such a loaded question with what, like a million things can be done potentially. This is a very restrictive district, and in general, it really only allows government facilities as conditional uses that require a special use permit. Now, that's just my general answer right now, but of course, I'm happy to speak with that resident in more detail.
That's fine, and I agree. I think that almost anything that comes through there is going to have to come through us and perhaps even go through city council to be approved. They're not going to put up a fire station without telling anybody or without getting approval. Okay, any more comment?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Don't you want to sit up here?
I'm going to leave that to you tonight. Thank you, Ernie Reinstein, REINSTEIN at 976 Judson Avenue in Highland Park. And I want to say thank you to the commission and to the planning and economic development department for all their hard work in doing this for us at no pay, basically. And I just wanted to talk tonight a little bit about what really hasn't been brought up tonight, which is the open space between Hazel and Laurel. For what's probably 100 years, there's been this beautiful strip of green in our town that everybody drives by all the time that is going to go away forever if this path is pursued. So I just wanted to, bring that to the attention. I think I heard tonight, 0 setback on St. John's. I don't believe that can be true, but I think that's what I heard. And that's just gonna kill that strip. The city hall, the cabin, and the library are all in just a beautiful setback now. I think there's other land available to the library to expand. There's space behind to the south, and there's space to the east. There's also room on the footprint of the building as it stands now. I don't know how much the library explored these things. I don't know if they're the easiest path, but I think they might be the best path for the city of Highland Park to maintain that open space. So I just wanted to, I guess, if I was sitting on the commission, I would be looking to send them back to the drawing board to re-examine this, or to come back with every possibility that exists other than taking this open space away and why they can't do it. And maybe they have that, maybe they don't, but that would be what I would be looking for them to show the city, because once you take that space, it's gone forever. And I've been a resident of the city my whole life, and I think that's a beautiful part. Living in Ravinia now, I'm up and down St. John's all the time, and that setback that's there now is just a hidden gem for the city. It's not labeled, and Abraham Lincoln didn't give the Gettysburg Address there, but it's a beautiful spot for our city, and I think it should be retained. So I hope that you respectfully send the library back to the drawing board so we can figure out another way to do this.
I think in the drawings, did it not say that there's a setback? In the drawings for the new part of the library, was there not a setback of?
Yeah. Carl was talking about the zoning setback, not the actual proposed building setback. So could you just clarify, Carl?
Yeah, so there's two distinctions there, what's proposed and what's required. The proposed setback to the west is, I believe, 28.9 feet. The required setback, if this is rezoned to PA, it's also then opposite the street from other PA. The required setback in that case would be 0 feet.
Mm-hmm.
If you could keep that visual up, you can see there's a notch behind the old library where there's space, and then there's also where the parking is, and the city owns the lots obviously to the east. additional parking is needed. I'm here for the open space. I don't think you get it. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So I'm Catherine Lambrecht. I'm with the Highland Park Historical Society. Lambrecht is Lambrecht, because I have to spell it all the time. And as to the references of Abraham Lincoln, he at least passed through here in 1860 on his way to Waukegan on the train. And I need to do this.
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, and I didn't lie about Lincoln. My only, it's even just a question, I didn't read it myself, the paperwork for today, but I was alerted that someplace in there, it stated that the Stupi cabin belongs to the city of Highland Park. It belongs to the Highland Park Historical Society. I'm just pointing that out because sometimes if you don't point out an error, sometimes it just becomes whatever. There's that, and I know there's all this discussion about the land and the Stupi cabin, and we're hearing about it secondhand. We're not gonna protest, we live with whatever we get, but it would be nice to be informed directly instead of indirectly, which is what has been the case. Otherwise, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hang on a second. All right, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state your name and spell your last name.
My name is Jean Meyer, M-E-I-E-R. I live at 948 Judson Avenue, just a few houses down from Ernie, and I've lived here for 41 years. I understand that the library needs some facility improvement. I'm all in favor of the ADA improvement and any other thing they need to function in a better way in this newer technological age. I'm a frequent library user and a big fan of the existing building. The main part of my comment, though, has something to do with preserving open space, but mainly has to do with an unnecessary use of taxpayer funds. And by that I mean the meeting rooms. The purpose for the meeting rooms was both for programming and for community use. I'd like to submit that we recall our comments about our sister agencies. There are many, many meeting rooms in the city of Highland Park, and I've been to almost all of them for meetings of one kind or another. The library itself has a few meeting rooms in the basement. Granted, they're not very big. The city hall has some meeting rooms, both this chamber and some others. The Park District, both the Westridge Center, the Rec Center, they have many meeting rooms, large and small. And the new Senior Center, which as you know is just to the east of the Rec Center and has been recently updated, has a huge meeting room as well as several small meeting rooms. And the new Senior Center has some smaller meeting rooms. In addition to that, we have schools that have meeting rooms. We have private facilities that have meeting rooms. And I just do not think that we need an additional huge space that is taking up green space, that is adding to the density of our city, that is adding asphalt for meeting rooms. As I understand it, because I did see the entire video presentation that the library put out, it's not just a meeting room. There's big meeting rooms that can be made into smaller meeting rooms. There's some storage, there's some restrooms. I haven't figured out what percentage this is of the 7,850 square feet, but I would advise that perhaps the Planning Commission should do that. We do not need additional meeting rooms in Highland Park. We do not need to add on to our beautiful library just to create meeting rooms, and it's an unnecessary waste of taxpayer money. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please state your name and spell your last name.
My name is Joanne Bernstein, Bernstein. I live at 1620 Spruce. I'm also concerned, as with a couple of the previous speakers, about destroying the current beautiful setback that we have, the entry to the town, and getting away from just north of this block where
it's all commercial, and getting to the library and the Stupi Cabin and this building, it's all graciously set back. And that whole view will be totally destroyed. And I also feel that the design is uninspired for 2024, that I feel that any addition would benefit by being new and different from the current building, rather than trying to be just slightly different with the kind of stone. Something like glass, if you're gonna do an addition, and if it has to be to the west, then have it be the more open feeling of glass. And although I really, like the previous speaker, I'm very much opposed to a western expansion, and I have spoken individually with some of the people directly involved in this, and what I understand is the reason for them not going in other directions, including not going up, is the cost. Well, we're talking about something that's gonna last for decades. And for decades, I think it's critical for the city to invest in what's the best for the whole city and to make it beautiful and useful. And I also think that the Plan and Design Commission, maybe the whole process is backwards, that it would have been great if you had the opportunity to be involved in the beginning of this process rather than at this stage, because for example, the city owns the community house, which is totally underutilized. And that space could be developed into fabulous meeting rooms, auditorium spaces, and could be put to much better use. And as for the maker space that the library is talking about putting in, it seems to me that that could very easily be a park district function. Now, I understand that a lot of libraries are doing these spaces with 3D printers and such. I do not know this for a fact, but my guess is that because of the change in utilization of various libraries, they have the space to put in these other functions and to draw more people into the library, since people are reading online more and not coming in as much for books. So, yes, I agree that the library needs to be ADA compliant, that certain changes need to be made. As for the current meeting rooms that we can rent, I imagine that they get busier in the after-school hours, but when I've reserved those rooms, with students too, the students, I was the chair of CAG, and I would meet with students who are student representatives in after-school hours, and those rooms were never fully utilized. So this seems like much too big a project and misdirected for what would really be most beneficial to the city in a lot of respects. I'm really disappointed in the entire project.
All right, thank you. Any more public comments?
Yes.
Can I please get you to swear yourself in?
Sure. I'm Jason Dreyfuss, Dreyfuss.
Okay, and you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I live at 477 Hazel, which is 2 doors east of City Hall on Hazel. I guess I got about 3 things I want to comment on. I'll start, I think it was Mr. Reinstein. Love what he said. I will say ditto to everything he said about the green space between Hazel and Laurel. I love how that looks. I love walking with my children there every year. I have a 7-year-old, I have a 2-year-old. How high can they climb on the statue? I don't hear anything about the statue. I don't know where that's going. That space is beautiful. I think it's gonna look terrible. Here's the thing, I think we're too far down the road. I think this is happening. That's the sad part. I think I came a little too late. So I'm just here sort of getting this off my chest. But I think this is bad. So that's why I'm here. So I think that, yes, coming out towards St. John's and getting into the green space that Mr. Reinstein discussed, Bad idea. I love that green space. Second point. So I live on Hazel. There's like a whole community of young school-age kids, including my children, also on the south side of Hazel. They're all in elementary school, maybe some in middle school. They're all on the bus. What's the deal with the lot on the southeast corner of Hazel? I know it's being rezoned. I don't know why. I'll confess, I didn't read the materials, but I'd like to know why it's being rezoned. I'm not wild about this becoming a polling place, if that's gonna drive traffic to that lot. Again, I don't think there's anything I can do to stop that, but anything I can do selfishly to prevent traffic from Hazel would be wonderful, because people drive too fast down Hazel to begin with. So, yeah, if there's gonna be like 6 weeks of early polling, and people just plowing down Hazel to get into that lot, I guess if something related to the zoning keeps them away, that would be great. And finally, the architect, great job, very impressive, talked about the stone, but the whole presentation this evening started with a guy saying that the architect screwed up because they ordered 22 feet light poles, they got 25 feet. What's the assurance that the quarry, I mean, what if we don't get the right stone? I don't know. Is this ordered? Is this reserved? Is the right stone coming? I don't know. But he did a fantastic job. Very impressive. Seriously. No, seriously. So, very concerned about the green space, concerned about the lot on Hazel. Thank you for everyone's time.
Thank you. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
My name is Joe Reinstein, lifelong resident of Highland Park, REINSTEIN. I just want to echo my brother's comments about the green space, but also I just really don't envy your position right now. I don't think it's a good strategy to lump all these things in together. I am on the board of the Highland Park Community Foundation. I served many terms on the Highland Park Historic Preservation Commission. My father was chair of the Highland Park Human Relations Commission. My grandfather was chair of this commission and also served on the council. My great-grandparents donated the Sylvia Shaw Judson statue that is now in the lobby of the library. My mother was on the board of the Friends of the Library and also the Historic Preservation Commission. I only mention that because I don't envy your position. The decisions you make tonight affect this community for centuries. The library's been around for over a century, and my family's been out here for over a century. And the mission of the library, the strategic plan, the priorities are all huge benefits to the community and should be commended and encouraged. The only problem is this addition and this plan. I also want to commend the architects. I think they did a very thoughtful plan. It's in the wrong place, or the conditions for its placement have not been articulated. The library has a massive 1974 addition. They have the previous edition, and they have the original building. Every time the library needs to expand, which could be every 25 to 50 years, they're just sprawling. There isn't thoughtful, long-term implications to the community, and every time it's required, it's just gobble up more land. The two Laurel properties were bought not with the properties on the market. The city bought them before they went on the market, and they bought them quickly because they wanted to house the senior center with the library in an addition. There was no public discussion about that. None of us had input on that. The neighborhood did scream out that they did not want more building east into a residential area, and that was all put quietly to bed until 30 years from now, the library needs more parking, and they build more asphalt to the east. So you have to understand the long-term implications about what you're doing. Again, I don't envy you. I think that, as the gentleman just said who lives on Hazel, this is a locomotive steaming ahead, and you're the only thing that can stop it. There's no reason why these things should be considered together. The library should have public activity. There shouldn't be a zoning non-conformance of the library. That can be fixed. All the things, the subdivision, the plat, the references to 1869 that needs to be fixed, all those can be done separate from approving the stone that sort of matches and looks pretty. That's the complication of being a planning commission and a design commission. So I just ask you to think about the long-term implications of this. We will forever lose this green space. The Peter Volkos sculpture has not been mentioned. Members of the community sat in this room, or one very much like it, with a job similar to yours, to think about beautification for the city and the long-term goals and mission of the city, and they purchased the Peter Volkos statue and sculpture and placed it there. And now that hasn't even been discussed. And with the single review of this, it gets moved. We don't know where. We don't know what expense. And say what you will about it. It's Peter Volkos. He's a globally recognized international artist who died recently. He's an important artist. So whether you want an all-glass facade of the new building or you want it to purposely mimic the old architecture, these are all questions that need to be answered after we've come to terms with the library sits on property that the library owns, not the city or not the park district, or that has been subdivided or put in the plat of survey appropriately, separate from, okay, now they have a strategic plan that requires expansion, and where should that expansion be? And it's not after hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent building this plan to come to you. It's sort of the wrong order. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, please come. Wait just a minute. Wait just a minute. We need to let everyone who's not spoken speak. So if you could sit down. Did you want to come speak, ma'am? Okay, you can go first because you haven't spoken yet. Okay, so I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, please state your name and spell your last name.
My name is Hannah Higgins. Hannah is my first name. Higgins is my last name, Higgins.
Okay.
I think I'm here to defend the green space. I'm struck by the language of the green space as empty space. I'm a professional art historian and cultural historian. I'm sure I'm not saying anything to the architects that they don't already know, but the new urbanism clearly equates happiness with green space. And we live in a community where our young people feel an enormous amount of stress. And this idea of the joy of children moving through green space, it isn't some sort of made-up touchy-feely thing, it's demonstrable. And I would just really hope we could defend that space. Peter Volkos, to reiterate what Joseph Feinstein was saying, is a major, major artist. And when people approach our town and see that beautiful green space with this weird pipe, right, they understand that we are a cultured town. We're a town that isn't just about building bigger and bigger and bigger. We actually defend cultural values. And I've written many books. I'm not just a fan. I defend culture for a living. I'm a full professor at UIC. I also think we have a lot of underutilized space in this town. Meeting rooms is one thing that we have kind of massively proliferating across this town. I don't think we need another meeting room. I also would advocate for a separate children's library. Why not put a children's library in one of those underutilized spaces like the community house or something like that. I love the library. I thank the library for being here. I thank the architects for their amazing work trying to produce a building that is thoughtfully integrated with our building. But I agree, it's not the right space, and I don't think a band of shrubs at the edge really says park, like Highland Park. It's in the name of this town that it is a park, and we need to protect that identity, or we'll be just like all the overbuilt suburbs that are just north of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, one last comment.
Thank you. Joanne Bernstein again. As for the Vulcas, it was when I first saw, it was almost a year ago that I first saw this plan for the library, that I became horribly concerned because of the potential movement of the Vulcas from where it is. And I went into the archives a few times at the library, and the history of the Vulcas is that the project was started by the National Endowment for the Arts that seeded $20,000 to place sculptures in a few cities in the country they selected, and we were fortunate to have been selected as one of those cities. And they had a blue ribbon committee of architects, curators, sculptors, including our very own Richard Hunt. And the group selected Vulcas from among a group of sculptors, and the sculpture cost $40,000, so the other 20 was raised by residents of Highland Park. There was fundraising down here, there were special events, and for placement of the sculpture, this committee from Washington that came here and looked over the entire city identified this spot to the west of the library as not the best, but the only good spot for the sculpture. And the thought of moving it from where this committee selected and where it was deemed that it really belonged, it's painful to think about that happening. And yes, it's worth multiple millions of dollars. And the other problem with the Vulcas is that in about 1990, when it had degraded, rather than restoring it as it had been when it was created in the early 70s, it was painted black. And it's still painted black. And the city council is talking about investing the many hundreds of thousands of dollars it's going to cost to strip off all the paint and properly restore it back to its beautiful bronze. And I'd like to suggest that all of you go over there in daytime and look at it. And if you get close, you can see that there are a lot of scratches on the sculpture where the lawnmowers have rammed into it. And where those scratches are, you can see the bronze underneath. And hopefully the piece will be restored to its natural beauty and will remain where it belongs.
Thank you.
Can I,
Just a second, let me get to Commissioner Littleworth, please.
I just wanted to add to.
Councilperson, sorry.
That's okay, Ms. Bernstein's comments. You are correct. The council has considered at the committee of the whole whether or not to do the refinish, and we are looking at the patina. And the rough estimates at this point were about $80,000 to do it. But to move the statue and to take it apart, to move it, and then to finish it, and then to put it back together in another place was going to be at least, well, we had it up to $750,000. So the estimates are still out on that move, and we haven't made any decision, and we asked staff to look into it much more closely because of that. But I did want to just add that piece of information because all of this goes into cost.
Right, thank you.
actually, my request was to Councilwoman Littleworth as well, because I know we heard a lot about the committee of the whole meeting, but I think maybe now, could you inform us a little bit more about the discussions for the placement and the alternatives, I'm pretty sure a lot of that came up, right?
Yes, it did. And we actually had a wonderful report by staff who researched several different locations that they were considering to move the statue to. And the council out of hand agreed with much of what was presented. The 2 or 3 of them were not appropriate locations. And we came up with only 2 possible locations to which to move it to, unless we kept it where it is.
But I meant for the library project overall, right? I mean, you guys started the discussion at the committee of the whole.
Oh, no, it was only in response to the library project. Otherwise, it's one thing to discuss the finish, but the movement was in response to this project.
No, okay.
That's incorrect. I'd ask staff to check into
Was
that.
the council ever discussing alternatives for the location of the addition to the library, or even questioning the need for the addition?
No, we have not gotten to that point yet. However, I mean, obviously we have, in the sense that it's been budgeted and we've looked into this, but there were several other areas in which the addition was looked at also, which is to the east, up, and to the west. But not as a separate building. It's, to my understanding, it's all been as one, and Smith, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but at the committee of the whole, we began our preliminary discussions because we knew this was coming to the PDC, and depending on where it goes from there, the council will then take it to the next level. If that answers your question, Commissioner. I'm not used to the role reversal here.
Yeah, those were in the context of a budget considerations. And the library had come and done some presentations, and we included links to those in your.
I mean, so was it the library's idea to start the intergovernmental agreement? And how did the process start, right? I guess maybe that's.
Oh, yeah, why don't you come up, Ms.
Maybe I
Smith?
go back to
You
the
want Ms.
beginning.
Smith to come up and answer that question?
I think you should.
If you know, I just.
Because that's a big part of it.
Oh, come on up to the microphone, please, so we can hear you.
Thank you very much. There were a lot of questions. Could you please tell me again the first question you'd like me to answer, and I'll make sure to do my best.
So, I mean, we seem to, I think one of the complaints that I heard was we've gotten a long way down the line, and nobody is quite up to speed on where we started from. The whole, this is an intergovernmental cooperation between 3 entities, right? So how did that come about, and who was in on that decision-making process to move that forward?
Absolutely. So I'll speak a bit about the engagement process, about the project, and then also about the IGA. The library board had discussed the project as early as, in detail, as early as 2023 in the selection of an architect firm. In February of 2024, we held a community meeting with mailed invitations to everyone residing within 800 feet of the library, and we also did our best to promote it both in the Highlander, mailed to every home, and in city and library communications. At that February meeting was where this concept was first introduced in detail. And then following that meeting, there was discussions with the public. The library board continued at their public meetings to support the next steps with the process. And then at the May committee of the whole meeting, we presented details about this concept to the council to make sure that the concept was well known at that time. In terms of where the IGA started, the MOU, it is an IGA, excuse me, the IGA between the City Library and Park District, that began out of the idea of this expansion project. that if the library would be moving west, that's Park District property. And so we had approached the Park District to have the conversation with, along with the city. That IGA was approved, was that at the September meeting?
Pretty recently. Pretty
Yes.
recently. And it was a swap of property. It just made more sense for the Park District to have one parcel and the city to have a different parcel.
And as a condition of that IGA, the properties to the east, obviously, as Mr. Friedman had mentioned, any zoning would come to this body, but my understanding was there was an intention, the Park District, to potentially develop the lots to the east for passive recreation, i.e. a beautiful park. That was referenced in that IGA. So it did come from the library, and that process started back with engaging Studio GC in looking at the likeliest place for an expansion of the library building. And as Councilmember Littlewer mentioned, we looked at up, we looked at east, we looked at west, and cost absolutely was a factor. On behalf of the library board, I'll just share that your 9 neighbors who represent you on the library board considered 3 things in moving forward with the concept for this project. Form, how it would look; function, how it would serve the community in terms of library operations; and funding, to ensure that we had a responsible plan. And in trying to balance those 3 things, it was the opinion of the board that we had hit on that with this project. And of course, that means that changes would be made to our beautiful campus. And as those 9 trustees are members of the Highland Park community, I am as well. And we talked at length about the pros and cons in service of the community. An expansion to the east, and one of our residents had shared, was not well received by the neighborhood when it was pursued in 2014 as an option. And in addition to that, because one of the main goals of the expansion is to expand the Youth Services Department. The Youth Services Department is located on the east side of the building, and this expansion project would increase its square footage by approximately 50%. So if we were to expand on the east side, we would actually, in our explorations, need to relocate the entire Youth Services Department, which would increase the amount of square footage needed to adequately serve a community of our size and the youth population. So in addition to an increased cost to build a larger expansion, the library and board also looked at what the ongoing operating costs would be to the community. Because if it's paid for with a 15-year bond that has a 15-year life, that expense, but the operating costs would go on longer. And at the approximate cost of $10 per square foot, approximately $78,000 would be needed for the maintenance of the space annually, and then a very modest estimate of the personnel costs that would be needed to operate what would be an additional entrance should the expansion be on the east side that we identified as potentially, more than potentially, being necessary should we expand to that side, was cost prohibitive when you look at it over many years. So I think I'm going a little bit rogue, and I want to come back to you for what questions you'd like me to address. I hope that that suffices for that question.
Thank you.
So it sounds like, you know, you're almost aiming for a land swap with taking the land on the west side for the building and making the land on the east side a park. Okay.
And if I could just clarify, the comment was made that the trains already left the station or were far down the track on this, and how long has it been discussed? And as Heidi said, the concept has been discussed for months over the past year with both the Park District and the City Council. But as I said in my opening remarks, this IGA specifically contemplates exactly what we're doing tonight, this process. Nothing was done, and the IGA specifically contemplates that we go through this process to get public comment, to get your input, and as I said earlier, the transfers don't get consummated until we finish the zoning process. We're at the very beginning of that by having this hearing tonight. It's not like we're doing this after the fact. Nothing's been approved, obviously, to now by any governmental body except the IGA, and the transfers, the closings, if you will, are contingent, as I said earlier, on all the zoning approvals and design approvals and all that. So we're not deep into it as some of the residents suggested, and we appreciate their concerns and we appreciate their opinions, and everybody is entitled to their opinion. But we're not halfway through the process or at the end of the process. There's no done deals here. That's why we're here tonight.
Thank you. All right, any more questions from the commission at this point?
I'd like to see what that intergovernmental agreement says. Is that swapping the west land for the east parcels that the library's been trying to buy since 2008?
How do you want to cover
That land, the agreement, I don't know if the Corporation Council can address this, but the Park District owns the parcel that the library is proposing to expand.
Right, I
so
understand
they're proposing to convey that to the Park District. Then there's other lands that they're proposing to transfer to the city, and in return, they want, if I'm stating this correctly, they want the city to commit, which we presume the neighborhood would like, that area will be allowed to be improved by the Park District for open space park uses. So, because you've heard tonight that over time there's been some talk about that land being developed, and the neighbors resisting that, not being in favor of it. So the whole structure of this transaction is sort of to help maintain those parcels as open space. And to address a couple other comments that were made, one about the southeast corner that I think Mr. Dreyfus made at Hazel and St. John's. There are no, this is not my client, this is the city, but this is the city parking lot. There's no plans to change that. And as Carl said earlier, if you look at the land use table in the zoning ordinance, what can be built on property that's zoned PA is very restrictive. And I think 98% of the uses listed are a conditional use. So in answer to the first neighbor's question about would there be additional hearings if the city ever decided to build on that parking lot, as an example, the odds are they end up with a use. If they ever decided to improve it, they would have to come back before you and then ultimately, go back to the city too through a public hearing process. And one last question, if I could respond to, I think it was Ms. Lambrecht, right here. Nothing is changing with the Stoopy cabin.
I'm sure of that.
Yeah, the only thing that, nothing is changing with the Stoopy cabin. The only thing that's a question is to how is it going to exist legally? Is it going to exist on its own lot? Is it going to have a lot line that goes around it? Is there going to be a lot line that goes through it? And there's an easement created? But the cabin itself, nothing is changing.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Director Fontaine.
The representations that Attorney Frank just made, that's my understanding of all those aspects.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Yes.
I can appreciate some curiosity about the context of what brought the IGA, but I do want to focus the commission's attention on the actual application before it. Though perhaps the IGA may provide some information about how we got to where we are. Ultimately, what the commission has to recommend for approval or not recommend for approval, or in the case of the design review, approve or not approve, is what's before it. Not how we got there, but rather, does this application make sense under the very specific standards as presented before this commission. And so that kind of makes your job easier and harder, because you have to, it's balls and strikes essentially. You know,
Right.
you have very specific standards. It's not about whether there are too many meeting rooms. That's akin to, in my head, competition. You know, do we already have too many car washes, for instance?
Right.
That's not something that is before this commission. That's
No, but I think it's important for us to understand the structure of the land uses, because it's taking away a portion of Park District land. And usually when there's a land swap, you know, Park District land is given to somebody else and somebody else gets, you know, then the Park District gives up some land somewhere so that we maintain the green space. And so I think it's important for us to understand that, because now we've left, you know, if we've determined that the east side is not the appropriate place for a building, maybe it's not the appropriate place for a parking lot, but what is going to go there? Who's going to get that land? What are they doing with it? And is it going to make up for the fact that the land on the west was taken? And I think it's important for us to know that.
It's not really about what this project could be. You know, let's say we didn't swap and we were to just proceed with an expansion with no land swap whatsoever. That's more a question of appropriateness for the city council. You know, the city council will determine whether it's a good idea or not to acquire and convey properties. I really do have to emphasize that the application as it stands, you know, taken for granted the conveyances, you know, so either it's a yes or a no as to how it's being propositioned right now.
Right, well, you know, as we say, go ahead.
If I may ask you a question, counsel, as I see it, there are 5 things before us, but there's really more than that, okay? The zoning, changing this to a PA district seems to me to be a no-brainer, okay? It's almost administrative, frankly. The plan of re-subdivision almost seems to be a no-brainer. Where we run into a quagmire of sorts is the special use permit for the conditional land use, which we probably ought to give because the library's already there.
It's already there, right.
But the second part of that section, subsection III, is addition. And that's what is holding us up in a certain way. Have I divided it up pretty appropriately?
Well, it's not a conditional use for a library and an expansion.
But it says conditional land use and addition. So what's your definition of addition? Seems to me the addition is what we're talking about here, the expansion.
Well, let me see exactly how we're.
Because otherwise, if you're saying either they can build it as of right, or they have to get the approval of both conditional land use and addition.
So I see how it's phrased in the agenda, special use permit for a library, conditional land use and addition. But really, when you're looking at the conditional land use, the special use permit is just about how that land is being used. It is confusing why that addition language is added there, but when we're talking about a special use permit in the nature of a conditional use, we go to that table in 15409 that says these are the things that you can do on a particularly zoned zoning district, one of which in this case is a library. The addition is just, it's confusing, but to me it has really no part, and you know, Carl, Dr. Fontaine, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really not what a conditional use permit is about.
So then, if what you're saying then, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you as well, Director Fontaine, if this board approves and it ultimately gets approved, of the conditional land use of the library on this land, and that's kind of, because land is owned by all sorts of different people, they can build as of right, subject to design review. Is that what you're saying?
They can build
Dr. Fontaine
the
has
expansion.
It's still a conditional use permit, okay? So the reason why the addition statement is there, although it may seem like it's confusing, it's so that no one mistakenly thought we're just approving the existing library as is. That could come before you, and that's true, because there is an addition to that library, yes. And so you're looking at the conditional use permit in its totality as saying the library with addition is what's before you.
Okay, well, let's say addition wasn't in there.
You could consider the library then as well.
And this board approved the conditional land use, which makes sense because it's non-conforming use as it stands right now.
Correct.
Then they could build this
They would need
as of right, subject to building requirements and design review.
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
If you had a library, if the library was before you as it stands there today for the conditional use permit that's being proposed here, without an addition, you'd approve that. If they were to expand that, it would require an amendment to that previously
Okay,
approved
so then the
conditional
portion that
use.
says conditional land use and addition is significant.
Well, that's why we put it.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean-
well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. That's why I asked the question.
I think it's what I'm trying to convey, I guess, is there is no request for a variation, right? This isn't saying that we're encroaching upon some area. If we're focusing on that conditional use permit, if we're focusing on just that aspect of this application, we are talking about the appropriateness of this land for the use of a library. Now, there are, if you're considering, I guess, the layout of the buildings, whether the location is appropriate, that's more a design review consideration. And that is within the standards that you would.
Yeah, but that's not what Director Fontaine just said. Director Fontaine said, and I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just trying to understand what is before the board. If before the board is conditional land use and addition, then we're talking about if the board approves it and it's ultimately approved, they can build. Period, understory, subject to building requirements.
They can build exactly what you
was approved.
Okay, yeah. Conditional land use. Sorry.
You got them. Wow.
Got him.
Got him.
My grandmother used to be able to pull them out of the air. So as it's presented to the board, and that's all I'm trying to figure out, is if we approve conditional land use and addition, then that, and I'm not saying yay or nay or anything else, I'm just saying that would give the library the authority to move forward with building this addition.
This particular plan for the addition.
To have the building that's there and the addition.
Correct.
That's correct.
That's
Subject, if I may, subject importantly to city council's approval.
Right.
You're not a final, this is not a final action, this is a recommendation.
And the city's paying for it.
No.
Well, the library has its own budget as well. and- Yeah, they're a component unit of government, yes.
But it is in the budget.
And that is a city council consideration.
Right, that's a city council and library board, yeah.
Okay. Do you have one last thing you wanted to say?
Well, I just wanted to, I think that Director Fontaine did a good job. I agree with him clarifying, answering your question. The application is for a single special use permit. Okay, it's not for a special use permit for the existing library and a special use permit for an addition. Well, I think what the city staff was trying to clarify in their notice was it's one project. And they wanted to highlight that it's a library with this addition. So should the special use be recommended for approval by you and then ultimately approved by the city council, it is one special use permit. And, the language was just trying to make it clear that it's for the whole structure that's the existing plus what would be added. The other thing I wanted to add is consistent with what Corporation Counsel said. You sit legally, as you know, as a quasi-administrative, quasi-judicial body where you're supposed to apply facts to the standards that are you go through this all the time. You are presented with findings of fact and whether or not the standards are met. So I would, it might be helpful if you go back to the standards for the special use or the conditional use that are in your packet at 4.2C, 4.2C. Again, I wasn't going to run through them, but, and I still won't, but there are 9 different standards here. And the question is, if you look at the facts, and again, that's why I said before, we're all entitled to our opinion, but your job is to apply the facts. That's why I started out by saying, what are the current uses? What are the surrounding uses? Those are facts. What is the proposed zoning? What is the surrounding zoning? Those are facts. How long has the property been vacant? Will there be proper adequate utilities? Will there be a disturbance or interference with traffic and parking? That's why you hear from a parking expert. Those are all separate and apart from your design considerations. We're just talking about the conditional use. So we've tried to establish as our job during the public hearing, and you heard, that's one of the reasons why you heard in the opening from Heidi Smith, why is this being pursued? Because the typical issue for a conditional use is community need. They wouldn't be pursuing this if there wasn't a community need for the proposed use in the proposed location. So I would just direct you to the standards because they really drive what your, as you know, what your job is. Thank you.
Karen.
Okay.
Commissioner Moore.
Yes.
I'm terribly sorry to interject this, and I'm not quite sure actually if this belongs at PDC or before the council where we will consider it also, but Mr. Burhop, you made a comment before, and I just wanted to clarify that because I believe it was a misstatement in that you said that on the west side, it would be 29 and a half feet, and I don't know what that was from, the new addition. I don't know if that was to the sidewalk, to the street, but I believe I asked for clarification from the library, and by the way, they have been unbelievably helpful in delineating what this will look like for us. But it's my understanding that with the pavement and the sidewalk and the bushes, we're talking about 9 feet from the sidewalk to the pavement, not 29 and a half feet to the corner of the building. And if anything, I believe the building was 25 feet. Where's Ms. Smith? Oh, there you are. Sure. And again, I'm not sure that's relevant. I just want to make sure that you do have that as part of it. And for the neighbors here, when they were questioning what in many cases has been called the lawn of Highland Park, the front lawn of Highland Park, I just want to make sure we have those numbers correctly. And frankly, I was really glad you had the picture of the west side because I couldn't find that in my packet because they showed all the exposures for north, south, and east, but I did not have a west.
Is this the packet?
So this is the site plan in the packet that was posted online, and this shows a dimension of 28.9 feet, 28 feet and 11 inches from the closest point of the proposed addition to the property line. This is the west side along St.
Right.
John's.
And you see the sidewalk right there?
Yes.
Correct. Now, how far is it from the sidewalk to the pavement?
The public sidewalk.
That I don't know.
But just to be clear, that's not next to the roadway. That's the sidewalk that's on the property.
On the property, but it's still asphalt, or it's not green.
Understood. Okay, I
That's
just want to make
my
sure it's
point
not
is,
confused with the sidewalk on,
It's one thing to say
next
the
to road.
building ends here and you have 29 feet of green, which is wonderful. But considering there are doors there and you need sidewalks there, which I understand, and I believe it's a 5-foot sidewalk as compared to a 3 or a 4-foot sidewalk. 5-foot sidewalk. So my question is, from the outside of the sidewalk to wherever that street sidewalk is, what is that dimension?
17'10".
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. But it's not, that's what I wanted to know.
I just want to state that
And I wanted
into
the public to hear that, so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, is that the design professional for the library? So then, you said that was 17?
17 foot 10.
Okay, so they stated 17 feet and 10 inches.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that.
And I assume they're referring to the distance here.
So between the two sidewalks.
Because obviously it
Right.
narrows, and obviously, I mean, you can see the setback narrows as it goes north and south.
I'm not asking that, I understand that that has to be that way, but that's the clarification I wanted. Thank you very much.
Okay, so what do we want to do, Commission? I wonder if we want to sort out the zoning map amendments and the subdivision, separately from the design review, or do we want to try to do it all together?
We're not considering recommending approval tonight, are we?
No,
We're just talking
this-
about either continuing it or asking staff to draft findings of
Okay,
fact.
okay, you're
It'd be
right, sorry.
direct,
Just
yeah.
because, one thing I will say, special exceptions require 5 members of the PDC.
Yes, and we
That's
don't.
fine.
Yes. All right, so. Yes,
But I think the consensus is we are willing to move forward on the zoning map amendment, which is the necessary first step anyway.
You could.
can we do that?
Well, you still need the findings of fact.
Right, so we need the findings of fact to do that, so.
So you could direct staff to draft those for a continued public hearing on this entire matter, yeah.
Yeah, and
What
that's
he
true
said.
for all of it, even the special exception. You just can't recommend for approval the special exception without 5.
Right, okay. So let us, we will need a motion to do those things. So did somebody write that down, or?
A motion
just
to
to
direct staff to
findings of fact on it for
draft
all of
findings
them?
of fact
I guess we,
related to the considerations before you, and then continue the public hearing to a date certain.
Which I believe we thought would be the 12th of December.
No, we have a 3rd and a 17th, is that right?
I'm sorry, what did I say?
That's
I
right.
meant the 17th.
Okay.
The 17th of December.
Importantly, is there anything that the commission needs from the applicant to submit that staff will need to review, et cetera, so forth for your next meeting?
Is there a way we can get a copy of the intergovernmental agreement, or is that not allowed for us?
It's not relevant to this consideration,
Okay,
but it's
all right.
available online on the
Okay,
city's
all right, then
website,
that's-
so
public.
we
For
can,
us to
yeah, it's
find.
public, you know,
Okay,
right. It is. We can tell you what meeting date, you know.
okay, so can I get a motion from somebody, because I'm not supposed to make motions.
so I would move we direct the staff to draw up findings of fact approving the 5
Items.
items under this public hearing.
And do you want to include in your motion to continue to a
Can
date certain?
I combine those?
You can.
And continue this hearing to December 17th.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Henry. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nanis.
Aye.
Commissioner Henry.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kirsch.
Aye.
Chair Moore.
Aye.
Ayes have it, this motion is carried. This item has been continued to December 17th, 7 PM in this room, City Council chambers. There will be no new notice, so notice is actual. This item has been continued to December 17th, 7 PM. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everybody, for coming to give your opinions and thank you for presenting. As you make your way out, okay, as you make your way out, please contain your chatter because it does come up to the room and we're not allowed to close the doors. So maybe chat outside. All right.
And we're not done.
No, we're not, but we're almost done. Okay. Do we have a administrative design review update?
There's one item, 482 Central, they had an awning, and they put a new awning on that was approved administratively.
Thank you. Our next regular meeting is December 3rd, 2024. Do you want to,
We anticipate several possible items. One, there may be a sign package, and then there may be legislative items that are being brought forward by the city. Zoning text amendments.
okay, thank you. Case briefing?
We have a couple of things going to city council. Last meeting, yesterday, the Deer Park, 41 Deer Park subdivision was approved.
Okay.
So that's all I have. Thank you.
Is there any other business from the public? I think they've had their business, okay.
Yes, they did their business.
All right, in that case, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
So motioned by Commissioner Henry, seconded by Commissioner Nanis. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. The meeting is over. Thank you.